Hello everybody, my name is Matthew DeVore. I am the sound supervisor at Arizona Theater Company, and welcome to this tutorial crash course on Qlab 4. I hope everybody is safe and healthy and enjoying their time at home, not too bored and not going stir crazy, and hopefully we get back to normal soon. This tutorial should help you identify and build your own Qlab workspace and all the little bells and whistles that come along with it and what the functionality of those are. All right. Before we get started, I'd like to show you a little bit of the home system I have going on right now, and what you would need to do this yourself at home. And also just kind of understand how it works on a larger system. This is the very basic setup. So a couple speakers. You got your speakers in your theater or space, wherever you're operating Qlab 4 at. I have a Focusrite 2i4 sound card. Nowadays, Dante seems to be replacing physical sound cards, but these are still a thing. They do exist. You might see larger 18i20s that have many outputs on them. But this one's a little stereo sound card, and it works perfect for what we're going to be going through today. This is the computer. It does have the Qlab 4 bundle on it. That is a very expensive bundle. If you do not have Qlab 4 downloaded on your computer and can't afford the full Pro bundle, you can download the demo version. You can head on over to figure53.com or just Google Qlab 4 demo. So that's that, and we'll get started here shortly. This is your Qlab 4 tutorial series. This will be a growing series. Today we'll start with our intro to Qlab, system requirements, getting started, building your workspace, and playing back your first audio cue. For those of you who are familiar with Qlab 4 already, this may be just a refresher, and as we go on, you may find new things that you didn't realize, so look forward to that. So, a couple things before we get started. You want to make sure that your Macintosh, your Mac, is up to date and has the proper system requirements to operate Qlab 4. Qlab 4 runs off of 10.10 or higher, or it's required for your Mac to have 10.10, OS 10.10 or higher. So up in your left-hand corner here, this is how you can find that out. You'll click the Apple About This Mac, right? So we're running 10.13.6 on this Mac. This is a Mac Mini. Nowadays, the Mac Minis are pretty powerful little machines, and they can handle most of what you do with Qlab 4. The more you build complex cue lists, you might run into issues, but this is a pretty decent system here. So what you're looking for is Mac OS 10.10 or higher. High Sierra is 10.13. You want your memory to be at least 4 gigabytes. Qlab 4 likes a minimum of 4 gigabytes. A solid state drive is preferable. The processor, an i7 or i9 or later, is preferred. We have the i5. It's okay. It still works with that. But again, when you start to build those very complex playlists, you're better off having a bigger processor. So there you go. That's preferred as well. So if you have all these things set up in your computer and you're up to date with all of that kind of stuff and these kinds of system I guess properties, if your computer has all this, you should be good to venture into Qlab 4. All right. So that's that. We're good. The first things you want to do, right? Physical gear. Up in your audio settings here, system preferences, sound, right? So your sound. So I have a Scarlett 2i4 USB sound card. If you don't have a sound card, that's okay. You can use your internal built-in speakers as long as your Mac, your tower, your laptop, which most of these all do have built-in speakers. As long as they have them, you should be able to listen back from Qlab with those speakers. I have the Scarlett 2i4, and I like it because then I have a couple of external speakers, which I showed you in that original video, initial video of my system layout. So you can get more complex, obviously, in bigger theaters. We have, upwards of 30 speakers, and then you are required to have, obviously, a bigger sound card, or what we use nowadays, Dante, and that's a whole nother beast, if you will. All right, so to get started, you're going to want to create a show folder. Without a show folder, Qlab doesn't know where to pull its targeted audio files from, and you'll see that when we get into the actual workspace. Qlab likes to know where its files are living. If you pull them from a hard drive directly and don't put them somewhere in a folder on your computer, Qlab 4 can become very confused, and you'll get a bunch of red X's, and it's a big pain in the butt, right? Because then you're searching around trying to find all these files and what you did with them. So let's see here. So Shift Command New will create a new file for us, new folder, and we're going to call this our Qlab 4. Let's say intro tutorial, right? So that'll be the first step that you want to do, is create a folder. Now inside this folder, you click open, double click it to open that folder. You'll see that it's empty. Now I've created a folder prior to this, so you didn't have to see me pulling all these sound effects, but I created an effects folder that is already broken down into a couple different subcategories, which is also important as you start to import more sound effects, more music, sometimes video if you're getting into video. So you're going to want to have a folder that has all of this within it and easy to reference those folders. So I'm just going to Command C, and I'm going to put it in here so you can Command V. Command C copies, Command V pastes with Max. So now that we have this folder in our Qlab 4 Intro Tutorial folder, we now have the audio, we have the effects, right? So air raid, explosions, nature, radio effects. So you'll start to continue subfolders within everything. Again, for a quicker reference to pulling sound effects. I also have a music folder back here under the Qlab 4 Intro Tutorial folder. When we save Qlab, the actual workspace will be saved into this initial folder, into the Qlab 4 tutorial folder. So, and you do want to have this folder for that same reason as well. So Qlab, the workspace, has a place to live and for you to pull from. All right. So we've got that. We've got our audio. You can pull effects however you'd like. Qlab 4 will play a variety of different file formats. I have AIF, WAV. There you can play MP3s. I don't think I have any MP3s in here. AIF, WAV are the most common, obviously. But if you do only have MP3s, Qlab will also work with that. All right, so that's that. Let's get out of there. So now that we've got our Qlab 4 Intro Tutorial folder, we are now ready to start Qlab 4, getting started with the workspace. So we're going to come down here to Applications. We are going to look for Qlab 4. Looks like a nice scientific beaker looking thing. All right, we'll open that. Left click, nothing's happening. There it is. All right. So this was from my first take. We're going to create a whole new one. So new workspace, right? This is to the left of this window. Clicking that will allow you to open a new workspace. I'm going back real quick. All right. Okay. So you've got your blank workspace. It's untitled. There's nothing in there. I guess right out of the gate, common practice, best practices is to save often, save always. So Shift Command S will save, or you can go to your file up here and save as well. Save as would be highlighted if I hadn't already taken this command here. So we're going to label this exactly what it is, Qlab 4 Intro Tutorial, right? And now we want to tell it where to live, this workspace of ours. So desktop, that's where I've got my folder that we just created, sitting there. So desktop, Qlab 4 Intro Tutorial, and I'll select that and we'll say save, right? So now if you went back to here, now you see my show folder or my show file sitting right there. So in the future, I can come from that folder and open the file, or I can just open Qlab 4 and file. There's many ways to do it. Oops. You can come up to your file and you can say open recent, and you'll see your last few shows that have been opened, or you can open Workspace and you can search a folder. You'd be able to search this Qlab 4 intro tutorial folder. Many ways to open it, but you do want to have it saved into your actual show folder, right, that we have created. So now we know we at least have a blank template stored or saved. All right, so next steps. Moving down to the audio routing. So before you even put an audio file into Qlab, there are a couple of steps that need to be taken in order for that to work properly. Down at the bottom right hand corner there, I think you saw me click it. I'll just do it again. This little gear here, that's your settings window. You'll want to click that, right? And it'll pop up the settings folder for many different functions: audio, video, MIDI, networking, Q templates, etc., etc. We're only dealing with audio today. I don't want to get too far into things and confuse people, so we'll start with one thing at a time. I have a little bit of ADD when it comes down to some things, so bear with me. All right. Excuse me. So clicking audio, right? We clicked the audio, the blue highlight. What's blue is what you're looking at. So we're looking at audio, and currently it's showing 2 audio patches. We're not using the second audio patch. We're just using the audio patch 1. It's the Scarlett 2i14. So clicking that, so it'll say no device. Clicking this top bar here in your first audio patch. You can add more as you go later on, but very rarely at ATC anyways do we have multiple audio patch paths, if you will, sending to different systems. It's one system dispersing all of those audio patches. So as I had said earlier, you can use your built-in speakers on your laptop, your Mac Mini, your Tower, whatever's got speakers built into it. That can certainly be an audio patch for you. Again, I'm using the Scarlett 2i4, so I'm going to select that device. That's my output patch assignment for audio cues. It will be, I guess, delegated through the Scarlett 2i4. To the right, you'll notice an edit patch. Right, so you're going to click edit patch, and here you'll have 3 different menus. You'll see cue outputs. This is where you can label, and I like to label things so we can see them for the future, and we're not, confused about what is what. So because I have a left-right system, output 1 will be left, output 2 will be right. Right, and you can also say speaker left or speaker right. Or we can say main left, and main right, because these are my mains, if you will, my main speakers. Right, so main left, main right, and don't need to worry about the rest of those. We can make those disappear from our settings view, and I'll show you how to do that shortly. Systems like what we've got at ATC, we run up to 16 outputs, so you eventually would go through and label many things: subs, house delay, line array, etc. Right? So that's the first step there in this window, is labeling your outputs. You're going to want to click over to device routing, right? And then you'll see that I have 4 cross points here. And that's because I have a 2i4. It's 2 inputs and 4 outputs. My sound card has 4 outputs, and we are only using 2, so I'm going to drop those and just get rid of things for aesthetic pleasure here, so we're not looking at possible confusion in the future. Not necessary for you to do that because you're not outputting to 4 speakers. It's not going to matter anyways. You could leave all that up and it wouldn't matter. But for myself, I like to see what I'm actually and physically using in my system, right? So you can see that the cue outputs that we labeled in the last window have now reflected here. So we know main left is patched. You want these cross points to be at nominal. Some designers will, prefer to have them -5, -3, whatever it is. It's a preference. And I just start with 0 across the board. That is my preference. Judge me if you will. Okay, device outputs. We're not dealing too much with that right now. That'll be a later discussion as well. So to recap, Q outputs, you're going to label what you got. Your speakers left, speakers right. You could say, you know, computer left, computer right, whatever. However you want to make it. You can make it Aunt Sally and Uncle Roger or something. Okay, device routing. You click there. You make sure you've got your cross points and everything's assigned and your master's up, etc., etc. Right? Great. So that is all looking good. And please slow me down if I'm moving a little too fast. I can't hear you, but please send me feedback and I'll slow down in the next video. Okay. All right, moving along. So we have now set up our audio patch. This, in theory, should all work correctly, right? These are all default settings here. No need to mess with those now. We'll talk about those again in a later series. And the next thing I like to do before I start is go to my Q template for audio. So Q templates are basically a global setting that you might want to have every time you import a new audio file, a new video file, etc. Right? So I like to come in and set my audio file by selecting audio, my global settings for audio files. If you head to audio levels, you can see that we're showing 10 of these inputs here. I'm going to change that to 2 because I only have 2, right? So 2 outputs. The next thing I like to do again is drop these to negative infinity. So option click will take it to 0 or take it all the way out to negative infinity. Or you can just drag your slider. It's a little harder to get a little more accurate. You have to kind of play with it, and that's annoying. So this is telling me that every time I put a new audio file in, every time that file is added to my workspace, it will be nominal across the board. My, again, preference is to keep everything at negative infinity because if you say you forget to go in and adjust those levels beforehand and you just hit go, depending on your file, audio wave, whatever, it can be very loud, it can blow speakers, it can hurt people's ears. So I do this as a safety feature. So across the board, every file that comes in is negative infinity, right? And those are the cross points there. Master can stay at 0. You know, sometimes negative 10 is also a great place to start. Negative 5, again, it's a preference thing. I'm going to start at 0 because I'm at home and I know these speakers. All right. So that is that. That's all you need to do with your Q template there is set your levels for every file to be imported, if you will. Cool. So we've gotten that completed, right? Next thing to do would be to start your Q list. And let's make this a little bit bigger. You can make your screen a little bit bigger by dragging the bottom right corner. Okay. Okay, so loading the first sound cue into the workspace. There's multiple ways to do this. You can do it via this little speaker here. It says audio. You can click that. It'll drop a cue right in for you. All right. If you look down here, it's showing you no target. And this is a target. And this is a target. Or you can double click here to your file and you can import cues by clicking and dragging into that file, right? Let me show you the few different ways you can do this. So Command Delete will take that away. Let's do this. So hitting the audio speaker, you come to your target. Oops. Come to target here. Click that. It's automatically opening up my folder, but just to show you, if you go back to desktop, Qlab 4 intro tutorial, my audio files, I'm going to start with music, kind of as a top of show music. And click that. So, and then you'll get the open prompt, right? So we'll click that there, and now we've got a file that has been imported to Qlab. And down here at the target, it's showing you where that file is coming from. So if you ever need to reference, you know, where your file is coming from just by visually looking at it without having to click a bunch of windows, you'll see that there. right? So that's another way to do it. The third way to do it, Command Delete, is clicking this audio speaker again, right? And this says double click or drag a file here. So you can double click it or not. There you go. And again, it's pulling up my folder that I've been working from automatically. If you had to, you could go back through and search, but we'll just do this and we'll say open. All right, so now it's there. It's showing that it has a target. So this is the whole point of that folder that we initially set up, is so that Qlab 4 knows where its targeted audio file is coming from. If you do not have that folder and all of your files within it that you will be using, Qlab 4 will be confused and you'll get a nasty X to the side here that is telling you we don't know where that file exists. So it's imperative to make that folder. All right, so we've now got our audio file into Qlab 4. Before we can hear anything, I can press play here. Oops, not like that. Forgive me. Select your... So that happened because I had clicked over here, right? So now I can do that. You got to make sure your Qlab 4 screen is selected before anything happens. But if I hit go, we aren't hearing anything. Nothing at all. And that is because, ladies and gentlemen, escape will stop a cue. Spacebar will go on a cue. But the reason we are not hearing this particular file is because if you look down here at the audio levels, as I had shown you before in those cue templates, I've dropped them to 0, right? What I'd like to do is bring those, let's say -5. Come on, why isn't it letting me click? There we go. -5 and, oh goodness gracious, -5, right? Okay. So now that we've given it level and our cross points are showing that it's in, my inputs 1 and 2 because we're stereo, I've got 2 of them. It's a stereo track. If you have a mono track, it'll only show you 1 input. Qlab 4 or Qlab in general will just recognize what kind of file you have. If you have, let's say, a 5.1 surround system, you'll start seeing many more of these inputs come along, right? So for now, because we've only got a stereo folder or stereo file in here, this is a stereo file by recording. This is what it looks like. So cross points are up. We're outputting to the main left and main right at -5, and hitting spacebar again will play your cue. So let's take a listen. I'm not sure if you heard that all right. Hopefully you did. I don't know if you noticed, but at the beginning of that track, there was a slight delay before hearing it. Down here, next to audio levels, you have your time and loops. If you click that file, or that tab, you'll see this dead space here, right? And we don't like that. We want, as soon as the stage manager calls the cue, we want that cue to hit. You can zoom in using the scroll bar on your mouse to get a more fine look at that audio file and see where it exactly starts. So up to the top left here of this audio file, you can take this little cross point here and drag it over to something like that. That's very close to starting. That little bit of time you may not notice, but we can make it really accurate and do something like that. We can even get more accurate and zoom all the way in. Scroll all the way over, and you see there's where it technically starts, but you don't want it to sound too unnatural, I guess. Okay, and just because there's nothing at the end of that, I'll take it over and cut it off, just in the event that there is some weird anomaly or some noise there. But doing that, again, you take this right top hand corner scroll bar, and you can cut it off there. Okay, so now we'll hit play again. You want to make sure your file is selected. The selected cue will always be blue. The cue that we'll be playing is blue. You'll see as we move on into the more the continued series of this, as we start building more and more playlists or cues anyways, you will start to see what the functionality of the blue and what's actually playing is doing. So anything you want to edit or manipulate or change, that has to be selected, and you'll know that by the blue bar highlighting, I guess, that file, if you will. All right, so we'll hit the space bar again, and it's instantaneous there. So we've fixed that little minor issue, right? All right, so just a little recap. You guys have all created your Qlab 4 intro tutorial folder, or your folder will be called something else, obviously. I hope we're not all doing Qlab 4 tutorials, because then I don't have a job. You've made sure that you've got the proper system requirements, right? You've gone in for your settings and audio patch assignments you've set up. You've set your patch, you've labeled your patches, your outputs, and you've made sure that your outputs are live here and that your cross points are active as well. Next, you've gone and imported a file via your audio speaker here, or by clicking and dragging into the target folder. You can double click this, or you can drag this file from your folder directly into this bar here, and it'll come up. The other thing you can do is, again, drag directly from your folder to the workspace. So 3 different ways of actually doing that, right? Clicking the target down here, or up at the Qlab 4 intro tutorial folder, out of your show folder, if you will. All right. One other thing I'd like to show you before we get out of that, time and loops. There's some fun stuff here to the right. Let's say, the director wanted this music to kind of fade under. You can do the fades in a number of ways, but you can also do it directly at the audio file, and we'll show you what these functions do today. So using integrated fade, right? And this, you'll see this little bar pop up. Okay. Clicking anywhere on that will give you a cross point, and any of those cross points can manipulate the actual level of that audio file. So you can create your own natural fade, if you will. This locked fade to start and end, you'll notice my start point and my end points are not at the very end of the file on each sides, or the beginning and end of the file. So you'll click that, and that will integrate the fade, or lock the fade to the start and end points, so that it's reflective of what you're actually playing back. So let's just say the designer wanted the big busy stuff to kind of go under, because there will be some dialogue or something of that nature, or it just needs to go down into underscoring mode at that point, right? So if we go back, select this, and hit play, you'll hear that fade happen. There's your fade. And that's pretty low. So, something to look at here. You'll notice when you click this bar, it's telling me, or anywhere along this line, what this number is. You see that it's kind of moving with my mouse. I can't necessarily click it, but you'll see negative 25 dB at 31 seconds, If we move over here, we're negative 26, so we kind of go down below and then come back up, and then we start going down again. You can kind of see where you're dropping that fade. So negative 26 is pretty huge. Negative 15 is still pretty big. But that'll be a reference, a visual reference of what this actual level is of your fade that you've created. Okay? So there's those two functions within the time and loops tab for any audio file. I'm going to take those off because I don't want them. And this is one of my favorite things, is the pitch shift. So the rate at which we're going to pitch shift the pitch of the file. You can change up or down. You can make it sound like chipmunks or Satan, if you will. I do like the slowed down pitch of it. And this button here, preserve pitch, this will essentially keep the pitch of your file but slow it down or speed it up. So I guess the slower you go, the faster you go, you will start to hear anomalies in the sonically in the file itself. So it's not, super clean, but if you speed it up or slow it down by a point or two, it's kind of unnoticeable with most files. But we don't want to do that because I want to hear the pitch shift. So I'm just going to take it down to 0.92 right now, and let's see what it sounds like. And I'm going to demonstrate live what it sounds like to slide as you go. So you notice there at the end I did activate the preserve pitch, and so we'll go back and play that just so you kind of have an idea. So we're speeding it up, but we're keeping the pitch of the file that I've created. And if you slow it down, it's keeping the pitch, but it's slow. So that's a neat function when you have, a director or a choreographer that says, can we speed that up just by, why isn't it letting me select this? It's been doing that lately. I guess I got to write Qlab or figure 53. So rate of 1 is your standard pitch. It's the pitch of the file that has come into your playlist. So, but that function there with preserving pitch, that's come in handy with, choreographers or directors that say, I think we need to speed it up by a beat, something small. And you just kind of experiment until everybody's happy. Maybe dancers, want to be a little bit faster with that file if it's music, or again a voiceover that needs to be a little bit faster or a little bit slower, but sound like the person and not necessarily pitch shifted. That's a handy function there. And again, this pitch shifting function without the preserve of the pitch is great for dialogue. So if you ever want to hear, Jasmine sound like, I don't know, a chipmunk, like super fast and pitchy, then, have her record her voice and you can just bring it right on up. You can also bring her way down and have her sound like, Satan. I love you, Jasmine. Anyway, so that's that. Ladies and gentlemen, that is your tutorial to getting started and importing your first audio file. More to come in the future. We will, in the next segments, talk about groups, some of the other handy functions of different tabs within your files, and go from there. So stay tuned, and I look forward to putting another one of these out. All right, y'all enjoy now. Have a wonderful day and stay healthy.